It started on a night that felt too quiet to be normal, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes you notice your own breathing. I was sitting alone in my apartment, scrolling aimlessly through my phone when I heard a soft thud near my door, not loud, not urgent, just enough to make me look up. I thought maybe it was a neighbor or something falling in the hallway, but when I opened the door, there was nothing except a small black diary lying right in the center of the floor. It looked old but not damaged, like it had been placed there carefully, not dropped. I picked it up, turned it over, no name, no label, just a smooth dark cover that felt strangely cold in my hand. I looked down the hallway again. Empty, completely empty, no footsteps, no voices, nothing. I brought it inside without thinking much, which I would regret later. I locked the door, sat back on the couch, and stared at the diary for a few seconds before opening it, expecting maybe some random notes or someone's forgotten journal. But the first page made my heart skip. It had my name written at the top, clearly, neatly, as if printed, not handwritten. I froze. I was sure this was some kind of joke, maybe a friend trying to scare me. But none of my friends knew my address that well, and none of them would go this far. I turned the page slowly, and what I saw next made my stomach tighten. It was a date, tomorrow's date. And below it was a short paragraph describing an event. You will push a man down the stairs at 8:15 p.m. I laughed at first, a nervous laugh, because it sounded ridiculous. I'm not a violent person. I have never hurt anyone in my life. This had to be some kind of prank. I kept reading. It described the place, a metro station near my office. It described the man wearing a gray coat, holding a black bag. It even described the moment, how I would hesitate for a second before doing it. My hand started to shake slightly. I closed the diary and threw it on the table, telling myself it was stupid. Just words, just a sick joke. But something about it didn't feel like a joke. It felt too specific, too detailed. I tried to ignore it, turn on the TV, but I couldn't focus. My eyes kept drifting back to the diary, sitting there silently, like it was waiting. After a few minutes, I grabbed it again, telling myself I would just check one more page to prove it was fake. I flipped forward, and every page had a date. Every page had a crime, and every single one was signed with my name at the bottom, not just written, signed like I had agreed to it, like I had done it already. My chest felt tight now. I went back to the first page, read it again. Carefully, the words didn't change. They didn't blur or fade. They stayed exactly the same, calm and certain. You will push a man down the stairs at 8:15 p.m. I looked at the clock. It was 11:40 p.m., which meant tomorrow was only hours away. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. This was not real. It couldn't be real, I decided. Right then that I would not go anywhere near that metro station tomorrow. I would stay home, lock my doors, and prove this diary wrong. I placed it in a drawer and shut it hard, almost as if I was trapping something dangerous inside. Then I went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words again, clear and sharp, like they were burned into my mind. And just before I finally drifted off, I heard a faint sound from the drawer, a soft scratch, like a pen moving across paper, writing something new without me. I woke up suddenly, not because of a sound, but because of a feeling that something was wrong. The room was still dark. The clock showed 3:12 a.m. And for a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that everything was normal, that the diary was just a strange dream. But then I heard it again, that faint scratching sound coming from the drawer, slow and steady, like someone carefully writing line after line. My throat went dry. I sat up slowly, listening closely. The sound didn't stop. It continued with a strange, calm rhythm. As if it knew I was awake and didn't care, I got out of bed and walked toward the drawer, each step feeling heavier than the last. My hand hovered over the handle for a second before I pulled it open quickly. The sound stopped instantly. The diary was lying exactly where I'd left it, closed and silent. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart beating fast. Then I reached in and picked it up. The cover felt colder than before, almost damp. I opened it carefully, half expecting to see something moving inside. But the pages looked still. I flipped to the first page again. The same message was there, same words, same time. Nothing had changed. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm myself. Maybe I had imagined the sound. Maybe it was just the wood of the drawer shifting. I told myself I was overthinking, but something inside me wasn't convinced. I turned to the next page, then the next, checking if anything new had appeared. The crimes were still there, each one detailed, each one signed with my name. And then I noticed something that made my hands freeze. A page near the middle had fresh ink, darker than the rest, like it had just been written. The date on top was today, not tomorrow. Today. I stared at it, confused. I was sure the first page was supposed to be the next day, but now this one was marked for today at 4 a.m. I checked the clock again, 3:19 a.m. My chest tightened as I read the line below. You will open the door when you hear the knock. I felt a chill run down my spine. I slowly turned my head toward the apartment door. It was quiet, completely silent, no footsteps outside, no voices, nothing. I told myself it was just another trick, another way for this stupid diary to scare me. I closed it and stepped back, trying to laugh it off. But the sound didn't come out right. It sounded forced, hollow, and then it happened, a soft knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 gentle taps on the door. My body went still, my eyes locked onto the door. I didn't move, I didn't breathe properly. I just stood there as the silence returned. Maybe it was a neighbor again. Maybe someone at the wrong door. I tried to think logically, but my mind kept repeating the sentence from the diary. You will open the door. I shook my head, whispering to myself that I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't follow it. Another knock came, slightly louder this time, more certain. My feet felt rooted to the floor, but at the same time, something inside me was pulling me forward like a quiet command I couldn't ignore. I clenched my fists, trying to resist, but my body moved anyway, one slow step. Then another. I reached the door before I even realized what I was doing. My hand lifted toward the handle, trembling slightly. This was the moment. I knew it. This was exactly what the diary had written. I could still stop, I could still walk away, but instead my fingers closed around the handle, and before I could change my mind, I turned it and pulled the door open. The hallway was empty, completely empty. No one standing there, no footsteps running away, nothing at all, just silence, deep and heavy. I stepped forward, looking left and right, confused and uneasy, and then I noticed something on the floor, right where the diary had been earlier, a single sheet of paper. I bent down slowly and picked it up, my hand shaking again. It was torn from the diary, I could tell from the edges, and written on it in the same neat style were the words, "You have already started." I stood there in the doorway longer than I should have, staring at that single line until the letters began to feel heavier than ink, like they were pressing into my mind. "You have already started." I whispered it out loud, trying to make sense of it, but the words only made things worse. Started what? I hadn't done anything. I hadn't hurt anyone. I just opened a door, that's all. But deep inside, something didn't agree. Something quiet and cold kept telling me that opening the door was not as simple as I wanted it to be. I stepped back into the apartment and shut the door quickly, locking it this time, as if that could undo what had just happened. My hands were still shaking as I looked down at the paper again, then back at the diary in my other hand. I didn't remember tearing this page out. I didn't even remember opening to that part. Yet here it was, proof that something had changed without me knowing. I walked back to the table and placed the paper next to the diary, then opened the diary again. Flipping to the page with today's date, the line about the knock was still there, but now there was something new written underneath it. The ink still looked fresh, almost wet. "You will leave your home at 7:40 a.m. I felt a sharp wave of anger rise inside me. This was getting out of control. I slammed the diary shut and pushed it away. I was not going to follow any of this. I didn't care how detailed it was. I didn't care how real it felt. I was not going to let a book decide what I do. I checked the time again. 3:32 a.m. There were still hours before morning. I decided I wouldn't sleep. I would stay awake, stay alert, and prove that I could ignore everything written in that diary. I made coffee, sat on the couch, and kept my eyes on the clock. Every minute felt longer than usual. Every small sound in the apartment made me tense, but nothing else happened. No more knocking, no more scratching, just silence. Slowly, the sky outside began to lighten, and the numbers on the clock moved closer to 7:40 a.m. I kept telling myself I would stay right where I was, that I wouldn't move no matter what. 7:35. I leaned back, arms crossed, determined. 7:38. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like a quiet urge building up. 7:39. My legs shifted slightly on their own. I frowned, annoyed at myself, and planted my feet firmly on the floor. 7:40, the second the clock changed. I stood up, not slowly, not by choice. I just stood like my body had already decided. I froze in place, shocked at what I had just done. I tried to sit back down, but instead I took a step toward the door. My breathing became uneven as I struggled to stop, but it felt like trying to hold back a wave with my hands, useless and weak. Step by step, I moved closer to the door, my mind screaming for me to stop, my body refusing to listen. I reached the handle again, just like before, and unlocked it. I pulled the door open and stepped out into the hallway. The moment I did, the pressure disappeared. Like it had been released the second I followed the instruction. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to understand what was happening to me. This was not normal. This was not something I could control. I rushed back inside, grabbed the diary, and flipped through the pages quickly, my eyes scanning every line, every date, until I found the one that had started all of this, the entry for tonight, the one about the metro station. I read it again, slowly this time, every word sinking deeper than before. You will push a man down the stairs at 8:15 p.m. Below it, there, were more details than I remembered. More than last night, it described the sound of the crowd, the smell of the air, even the exact number of steps on the staircase. And at the bottom, there was again my name, signed neatly, confidently, like it belonged there. I felt a cold fear settle in my chest, not just because of what it said, but because of what I had already done. I had followed 2 instructions without meaning to. I had opened the door, I had left my home, and each time, I told myself I wouldn't. But I still did, which meant something much worse than the diary being a joke. It meant the diary might be right, and if it was right about everything else, then tonight at 8:15 p.m., I wouldn't just be reading about a crime, I would be committing one. The rest of the day felt unreal, like I was moving through a version of my life that didn't belong to me anymore. Every decision I tried to make felt weak, like it could be replaced at any moment by whatever the diary wanted. I knew I had to break this pattern before night came. I couldn't let myself go to that metro station. I couldn't let 8:15 p.m. happen the way it was written. I grabbed the diary again and walked straight to the kitchen, my hands steady this time, driven by something stronger than fear. I opened the stove and threw the diary inside, then turned the flame on high. I stood there watching it, waiting for the pages to curl and blacken, waiting for the cover to melt or burn, but nothing happened. The fire moved around it like it wasn't even there. The diary stayed exactly the same, untouched, not even a mark. I turned off the stove slowly, a strange heaviness settling in my chest. This wasn't something I could destroy, at least not in any normal way. I took it out and placed it back on the table, my mind racing for another solution. I thought about leaving the apartment, going somewhere far away, somewhere crowded or public where I wouldn't be alone with my thoughts. But the diary had already mentioned a crowd. The metro station was crowded. That didn't stop it. I checked the time again. It was already afternoon. Hours had slipped away while I was trying to fight something I didn't understand. I flipped to the last pages of the diary, hoping to find something, anything that could explain how this ends. And that's when I saw it. The final entry. The last page was different. The writing looked sharper, deeper, almost carved into the paper instead of written. There was no date at the top, just a line that made my breath catch. After the final act, you will understand. Below it was a description, not of a place, not of a victim, but of a moment. It described me standing somewhere dark, holding the diary in my hand, reading the last line. As everything became clear, I felt a wave of frustration and fear rise together. Understand what? This wasn't an answer. This was another question, another trap. I flipped back to the metro station entry again, reading every word carefully, trying to find a loophole, something I could use to stop it. But the more I read, the more detailed it became, like it was adjusting, like it was making sure there was no way out. The man in the gray coat, the black bag, the exact position on the stairs, even the hesitation I would feel before pushing him. It was all there, planned, fixed, unavoidable. I shook my head, refusing to accept it. I grabbed my phone and decided to call someone. Anyone. I needed another voice, something real. I dialed my closest friend, my fingers trembling slightly. The phone rang once, twice, then the call connected, but there was no voice on the other end, just silence, and then a faint sound. The same scratching I had heard before, slow and steady, like a pen moving across paper. My heart pounded as I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen. The call was still active, but the name had changed. It no longer showed my friend's name. It showed something else, something that made my chest go cold. It showed my own name. I ended the call immediately, my breath uneven, my thoughts spinning. I looked back at the diary slowly, and without touching it. I knew something inside it had just changed again. I walked toward it carefully, like it might react if I moved too fast, and opened it to the metro station page. The words were still there, but now there was an extra line at the bottom, written in fresh ink, darker than the rest. You tried to resist. I swallowed hard, my eyes moving just below that line. And there was again my name, signed once more, as if confirming something, as if locking it in place. I stepped back, feeling the weight of it all pressed down on me. This wasn't just predicting anymore, it was responding. It was watching. It knew everything I was doing, which meant there was only one thing left to test, something I'd been avoiding because I already knew what it might mean. I looked at the clock. It was getting closer to evening, closer to 8:15 p.m. And for the first time since this started, I understood that the real fear wasn't whether the diary was right or wrong. The real fear was that when the moment came, I might not even try to stop myself. By the time evening arrived, the air itself felt heavy, like the whole world was waiting for something I couldn't stop anymore. I tried everything, ignoring it, locking it away, destroying it, calling for help. Nothing worked. And now there was only one thing left. Time slowly moving toward 8:15 p.m. I sat on the couch staring at the diary, not touching it, just watching it like it might move on its own. The silence in the room felt louder than any noise. My thoughts kept circling the same. Question, was there any way out, or was I already too deep in something I didn't understand? I checked the clock again. 7:52 p.m., my chest tightened. I stood up suddenly, grabbing my keys. I didn't even remember deciding to leave, but my body was already moving. Just like before, I stepped out of the apartment, locked the door behind me, and started walking, not thinking, just moving. The streets felt different, unfamiliar. Even though I'd walked them 100 times, every step felt guided. Like I was following a path that had already been drawn. I reached the metro station without realizing how fast time had passed. The crowd was exactly as described. People moving in every direction, voices blending into a constant low noise. I stopped at the entrance, my heart pounding hard enough to make my vision blur for a second. This was it. This was the place. I could still turn around. I told myself that again and again, but my feet didn't listen. They carried me inside, down toward the stairs, each step matching the rhythm I had. Red hours earlier, I saw him before I even reached the staircase. A man in a gray coat, holding a black bag, standing near the top of the stairs, exactly where the diary said he would be. My breath caught in my throat. Everything around me faded slightly, like the world was narrowing down to just that one moment. I slowed down as I got closer, my mind screaming at me to stop, to walk away, to do anything except what was about to happen. But my body kept moving, calm and certain. I stepped behind him, close enough to see the texture of his coat, close enough to hear his breathing. And then I hesitated, just like the diary had said, 1 second, maybe less, but enough to feel the weight of the choice. And in that second, something strange happened. A thought broke through the noise in my head, clear and sharp. If the diary writes what I will do, then what if I change what I am about to do, not by stopping, but by choosing something else in the same moment? The idea felt small, almost impossible, but it was the only thing I had left. My hand lifted just like it was supposed to, but instead of pushing him, I grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back hard. The man stumbled backward into me, confused, and at that exact moment, someone else rushed down the stairs too fast, slipping on the edge and falling forward violently, crashing into the exact spot where the man had been standing. The sound echoed sharply. People around us gasped. Chaos erupted instantly. I stood there frozen, still holding the man's shoulder, my heart racing, my mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. I hadn't pushed him, I had saved him, but the result was still the same. Someone had fallen, someone had been hurt. I slowly let go and stepped back, my hands shaking again, a cold realization settling in. It didn't matter how I tried to change it, the outcome adjusted itself. The crime still happened, just in a different way. The diary wasn't controlling my actions directly. It was controlling the result. I felt a wave of dread wash over me as I reached in my pocket and pulled out the diary. I didn't remember bringing it, but there it was. I opened it with trembling hands, flipping to the metro station page. The words had changed. The description was different now. It no longer said I pushed the man. It described exactly what had just happened, every detail, every movement, rewritten as if it had always been that way. And at the bottom, my name was still there, signed, unchanged. I turned to the final page slowly, my breathing uneven. The last entry was no longer vague. It was clear now, complete. After the final act, you'll understand, below it, new words had appeared, words that made everything fall into place in the worst way possible. The diary does not predict your crimes. It records the crimes that happened because of you. My vision blurred for a second as I read it again. Try to deny it, but it was already too late. I understood now. Every attempt to resist, every choice I made, didn't stop anything. It shaped it, redirected it. But the outcome always circled back to me. I was not being controlled. I was the cause, the constant in every event. My presence, my actions, my decisions, they created the very things I was trying to avoid. My hands tightened around the diary as a final line appeared at the bottom of the page, written slowly, right in front of my eyes. Next entry is already in motion. My heart sank as I turned the page. Without thinking, and what I saw made everything go silent inside me. The next entry wasn't about tomorrow. It wasn't about another place or another person. It was about this moment, right now. It described me standing there, reading the diary, realizing the truth, and then it described something else, something I hadn't done yet, something I didn't even remember deciding. You will close the diary and place it outside a door. My grip loosened slightly, my breath caught because even before I could react, my hands had already started to move, slowly closing the diary. And in that final second, the most terrifying thoughts settled in my mind. This wasn't the beginning of the story, and it wasn't the end. It was a loop, and somewhere not far from now, someone else would hear a soft thud outside their door, open it, and find a black diary waiting for them, already signed with a name they thought was their own.